Thank you, Senator Kelly. We'll turn next to Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you so much for being here. I, like many of the senators here, have heard so many reports about how our seniors are being targeted with financial fraud, financial scams, AI-generated scams, cryptocurrency-related scams. It is unbelievable the amount that criminal networks, worldwide criminal networks, are targeting our older Americans. They have retirement funds, they have life savings, and these times are very complex, and these scams are getting more and more sophisticated. And so, unfortunately, our older Americans are soft targets for these very, very sophisticated criminal networks. Let's address AI. Scammers can use AI-generated and powered technology to do deepfakes on voice, do deepfakes on photographs. We know of a New Yorker whose mother received a call from a scammer using voice cloning AI to mimic her distressed child and needed $15,000 to get her out of jail. Unfortunately, that scam worked. Mr. Romanoff, are the technology development practices in applying AI that also protect consumers from fraud? Are there any unintended consequences of using AI for this purpose? And do you believe that the existing federal agencies are properly equipped, both in their technical capability and congressional appropriations, to combat these targeted scams?
Thank you for that question. I'll start with the latter question. So some federal agencies that are more geared towards law enforcement would be better equipped to deal with these scams. I do think that generative AI, in terms of its use to perpetuate fraud, goes across multiple jurisdictions, and so there is a need to increase the AI readiness in the workforce of AI in the federal government. The folks that can identify these issues and use AI itself to detect the fraud. In terms of your first question, and please repeat, what was it? I'm sorry.
It was, well, you already answered it, if you can use AI for good and bad in this scenario. And the second was, do the federal agencies have enough law enforcement power to actually address the problem?
Yeah, so in both of those scenarios, yes, you can use it for good and bad. I think the consideration around AI and its use to detect fraud is, there's a growing concern right now that, do you invest in the AI systems to detect fraud, or do you invest in the workforce individuals who have the expertise to identify trends themselves? I think as technology continues to be kind of expand and adopted, we're going to look at a gap between the folks that are entry-level kind of law enforcement folks and the folks that are looking at these systems long-term. So there needs to be some sort of consideration around, how do you train individuals beyond using AI to identify these issues? Because data has a deteriorating value over time. So these AI models that are used to detect fraud and trained to detect fraud, they need a constant source of data and updates in order to figure out what the latest trend is on that. Mm-hmm. And so...
Thank you. I only have a minute. I got to do another question. The second question I have is about cryptocurrency. We've seen the lack of regulation in cryptocurrency being an impediment to protecting consumers. And I'm very frustrated that the Senate has not held substantial hearings yet on how we can actually provide common sense, thoughtful regulation to keep good actors in the United States and to have law enforcement tools to ban bad actors. We have an example where our Attorney General filed a claim against a cryptocurrency company defrauding hundreds of thousands of investors. But one older woman, for example, a retired 73-year-old grandmother, invested her husband's life savings of $200,000 in a scam cryptocurrency company. We need companies to register with the SEC, with the CFTC, with the IRS. We need oversight by the Fed. We need oversight by all the regulatory organizations, and Congress isn't doing that work. The second thing is, I've also heard of scams where seniors are being asked to send money urgently because there's some bank account problem, and they're asked to send it at a cryptocurrency ATM. So even the low-tech version of fraud is being used to mislead seniors into thinking that that is a way to fix a banking problem. So, Mr. Weissman, I lead a bill, the Senior Financial Empowerment Act, which would ensure older adults and their caregivers have access to critical information regarding how to report and combat fraud. How would consumer education have helped in this situation? And Mr. Schildhorn, thank you for sharing your experience. You mentioned that you were asked to wire funds. How can crypto be used as a tool for scammers? And what do you believe could be done on the institution and consumer education end to prevent those type of scams? So both, please.
Yeah, I was a big fan of your bill, particularly the areas of consumer education, which are so critical. But the scammers create an emergency, and people respond, and emotionally. The thing I found the most interesting was your reference to the ATMs and the cryptocurrency ATMs. They are just the easy access road to sending money to the scammers, and they're unregulated. So as I said earlier, the law is always going to be behind technology, but the kind of regulations you're asking for are eminently reasonable, and these are the kinds of things we have in other areas of the economy. So this is what we should be doing.
Senator Gillibrand, on an institutional level, I look at the banks because there is one break where the scammer does not have the direct relationship with the victim, and that's at the teller. So right now you can't withdraw $9,000 from an ATM. You must have a human interaction with a teller. If banks are required to train their tellers to ask questions when they see an unusual cash withdrawal, that's an institutional change that might prevent scam. On the individual basis, I think Mr. Romanoff talked about having a family password, but there's another way to do it as well by asking a question that only your relative or your child would know. For example, if I asked who I thought was my son Brett, what's your brother's middle name? I mean, as soon as you ask that question, there's unlikely to be an answer. But to have consumers think of that while their child is hurt in jail is a lot to ask, because it's the emotional part of your brain that's controlling everything you're doing. The rational part of your brain is suppressed during this. But the teller possibility is there.
Thank you all for testifying today. This is an urgent crisis in my state of New York, and your leadership and your advocacy is making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. I'll turn next to Ranking Member Braun.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have one final